Watch them grow.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain how Anchor is your one-stop shop for creating podcasts. It's free. Yes, you heard me correctly. Anchor is free. And there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. Do you like to make money? Well, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership required. Everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. And we are officially live.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Oh, thank you, Spooky Voyager, for the follow. Appreciate it very much. I am Underground Media, and my co-host is Red, and our guest tonight is Larry from NightDive, and we are going to be talking cancel culture. Welcome back, Larry. Appreciate you having you on.
Welcome back,
Great.
Sir. It's always good to be here.
Absolutely. And we like having you here because we can talk games,
Absolutely.
we can talk history, we can talk culture, we can talk everything. It's great.
So, first of all, Red has already expressed his appreciation. I'm either famous or notorious, depending on how you want to look at it, for having a T-shirt for every occasion. So, I went with make Orwell fiction again for this evening. So our topic is cancel culture, and I had to actually ask for the opportunity to talk about this. There was a particular event that led me to this request, and this is a headline from Slate, dated April 4th, so really pretty recent. The headline reads: Trump decries cancel culture, calls on Republicans to boycott more companies, which is a kind of ironic headline, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You're trying to cancel the cancel culture and saying that canceling the cancel culture is okay. It's just one of those things. So I thought we would have a discussion about cancel culture, and is it real? What's the history behind it, and what does it mean for us today? Before I jump into the topic, I thought that I would actually start with a bit of a confession. So I was born in 1955. Grew up. A lot of my opinions were shaped in the 60s and the 70s. I have told more than my share of racist, homophobic, transphobic, and just generally offensive jokes. And there's a defense that people of my generation often use, and that's, it wasn't offensive during the time we told it. And let me just say on that defense, bullshit. We always knew those things were offensive, and I'll tell you how we knew those things were offensive. I have been in the room plenty of times when people told offensive Jewish jokes, either based around stereotypes or that endless subject of humor, the Holocaust. I was the one sitting there with a phony grin plastered on my face.
Sure.
I really believe in the words of Rabbi Hillel, who said, do nothing to your neighbor that you would not want your neighbor to do to you. That is the whole of the law. The rest is commentary. So I really believe that. That said, I fortunately or unfortunately, that was before social media. So the record of those things that I'm truly sorry for exists mostly in my conscience, my guilty conscience on those topics. I certainly don't repeat those behaviors today. I mean, I know
Sure.
at the end of the day, A, they're not funny, and B, they're harmful.
Mhm.
So that's just that, and that's just a topic of that I wanted to clear off my chest.
Sure.
So thank you for that.
Appreciate it.
Forgive me,
Absolutely.
Father, for I have sinned. That said, I thought, usually when I do these presentations, I always like to be, really serious about what I'm going to say. I don't try to skirt around it. I don't try to make you guess what my point is.
Right.
So I'll tell you what I hope that you'll get from my thoughts today and from what I'm going to share with you. One is, just because there's a word for something doesn't mean that thing is real.
Very true.
That's the first point. And the second point that kind of goes along with it is that words have power.
Yes, they
Absolutely.
do.
And the words that we use, dictate how people are going to perceive them. So, hey, Red, would you help me out with this one? Let me establish the first point. Red, have you ever gone hunting?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever gone snipe hunting?
I mean, other than Call of Duty.
No, I'm not talking about snipe.
Oh no!
snipers.
I have not personally gone snipe hunting, but I've sent people on snipe hunting trips.
So snipe hunting is something that's famous. I'm glad that you get that. But snipe hunting is something that is either famous or infamous. Generations of students have been sent out with their forked sticks and their snipe bags to go hunt for snipe at night, and spend all night outside trying to hunt snipe. And the butt of the joke is that there's no such thing as snipe.
Right.
So there you are.
It's like the mysterious jackalope.
Absolutely, but the words exist, right? So
Right.
so there's a snipe hunt, and I'll tell you where I'm headed is cancel culture. Is the term cancel culture really just a snipe hunt? And then the second thing that I'm going to talk about is the power of words and how we get persuaded by the words that somebody uses. So
Absolutely.
I did some research. I'm a historian. I love that stuff. Well, actually, no. I'm a historian as a hobby. I make video games for a living, but
Right.
But I did some research into the origins of the term cancel culture.
Mm.
So I found an article, that kind of chronologues it. It's an interesting thing. The first use of the term cancel culture that they found on social media. This is only on social media, but was dates back to 2014, and it was in an article. It was from a tweet by a guy named Miles McNutt, who's professionally a TV critic and was, at least at the time, an assistant professor at Old Dominion University. And the thing that's interesting about it is that when Miles was talking about cancel culture, he didn't mean anything political or anything offensive. What he meant by cancel culture was that the TV networks would give a show a really brief trial, right? I mean, if the pilot didn't catch on and maybe one or two episodes, they would cancel the show.
Right.
And that's what he meant by cancel culture, right?
Okay.
Nothing scary about it. His exact tweet was, "It's unfortunate how renew/cancel culture has made not renewed early read as canceled. Wait and see until pilots come in is normal, right?"
Yeah.
So that was that. But that phrase cancel culture morphed. It changed into meaning something else, and so the meaning of it, changed over time into something more political. And as far as people can find, it really began in 2017. So Aly Raceman, famous gymnast, she was one of the many young girls to accuse Larry Nassar, who was the Olympics gymnast doctor, of sexual abuse. And it's no longer up to debate. I mean, Larry Nassar was convicted for something like 500 counts of sexual abuse. Many of his victims were children. I mean, these were very young girls, and
Right.
And they dressed as one would expect of girls in a gymnastics program, right?
Right.
You don't wear a hijab to gymnastics, or maybe you do, but I mean, it's typically leotards, right? I mean, that's what it is. So then Gabby Douglas, a teammate, wrote, "Well, it is our responsibility as women to dress modestly and be classy." That was not a well-received remark, and people felt, and my tendency is to agree with it, that she was blaming the victim, right?
Right.
That young girl wearing a Pokemon T-shirt. I mean, who could resist that kind of thing? So, so Shanita Hubbard, also a teammate, responded by saying, "Let's talk cancel culture." Personally, I'm willing to give a lot of grace to young black girls simply because the world doesn't. And so that phrase of cancel culture became linked to the Me Too movement, right? I mean, so you were gonna cancel people where they felt that there were reasonable charges of sexual abuse. So by 2017, people began talking about cancel culture on Twitter in quotes, right? And canceling became synonymous with denying someone, often a celebrity, attention, right, because of something they had done or said. People began denying support to once popular figures, including Bill Cosby, Michael Jackson, Roseanne Barr, and Louis C.K. Now, let me just go back and say, of course, Michael Jackson has passed, but Bill Cosby was able to dodge the charges until his recent for a number of years. And Louis C.K., who was canceled for a while, he came out and he did his own things and broke all kinds of records. So this talking about cancellation, of canceling these stars, is probably exaggerating.
I think to a point it is.
I've mentioned before, Red, that I'm also, I'm at heart a capitalist, right? And I believe that I can control my own IP. I certainly don't want anyone telling me that I have to put one of the games that I publish on this site because I have it on that site. It's up to me to choose where I display it. And if I disagree with the financial policy, or if I disagree with the political views of a site, I don't have to do it. I control my own IP, right? And that makes sense to you. But then when I talk about the Dr. Seuss books being pulled by the estate of Dr. Seuss, right? Go ahead, Red.
I was going to say where it doesn't make sense to me, is I forget. I just know her by Gina. I cannot pronounce her last name, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time to all of our viewers. She is very open as being a conservative and a Republican, and all of a sudden she gets shoved off of the movie series that she's in. Because
the woman from the Mandalorian, right?
Yes.
That's the one.
So now I fail to see where that becomes appropriate, because there's several people in all of our worlds that differ in beliefs and opinions, and we're not trying to shove them out of their job, right? So I'm trying. That's where I struggle.
I'll give a rebuttal on that kind of. right?
Okay.
You hire people because they draw an audience.
Right.
And again, it was, I mean, her remarks offended, a portion of the population. If somebody who's in charge of business like me does the equation and says, well, on this hand, are the people that are okay with what she said, and on this hand are the people that aren't okay with it, and this hand is higher than that hand.
Right.
Then that's the way that's the way she's got to go. I will also point out that while she left The Mandalorian, she got another gig someplace else.
Yes, with another entertainment.
The one that I was going to actually bring up, and I want to say it was Teen Vogue, somebody that was a social media person on Teen Vogue, had done a series of certainly homophobic, possibly racist. I don't remember what it was.
Right.
But I do remember explaining to one of my friends that when I hire a social media person, if they offend my audience, that is their job. That's
right.
I hire them not to do that.
Yep.
Let me give you something on the other side to it. Something that was near and dear to my heart, and I can't recall her name, but she was the author. She was the writer for a video game series, and she did a post on Twitter about writing, and somebody that didn't have her credentials, that was not in the business, a person.
Right.
I don't want to denigrate them and say a rando, but it was a rando. I mean, it wasn't
right.
It wasn't the editor of a magazine or whatever.
Right.
He challenged
the average person,
and she shot him down by saying, you don't have the credentials. And he said, well, that may be, but I can still be right. And this continued until there were hundreds of people involved in this thread. And she ended up getting fired. And she accused him of mansplaining, saying that, that's something that does happen. But she got fired. And I surprised some of my friends in the gaming community by saying that I understood and it's not up to me to support it. I mean, they didn't ask for my support or opinion, but I certainly could explain why they fired her. I don't know if I would have done the same thing. It depends on the circumstances, but I can certainly come up with a reason why it might have been, because after like the 50th or 60th tweet, it wasn't her position. It was that she was too stupid to stop.
Right. That's exactly it. And there's one thing I want to mention also real quick is that there is a difference between canceling and accountability.
Yes.
You can have accountability without completely canceling somebody. And like you said, if you hired a social media person to, advertise, to do your marketing, to do your social media, it's their job to have that professional position, to act in a professional manner, and to do that. And if they are not doing that, then they are not doing their job.
It's a matter of competence rather than politics.
Right.
Correct.
The other thing that goes with that, Red, and that I do want to say is that again, you get into that capitalism thing. We're assuming, and I'm not playing games. I mean, I'm pretty sure she got fired for her remarks, right? And when those came out,
and I'll be full disclosure, I'm not aware of exactly what was said.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna stand very firm on that. That kind of like I think it was during the live panel that we did. A subject was brought up, and I did not know all the details, so I can only go off of some stories that I've seen. So I am kind of going a little blind into that particular case.
And I would say where you start getting into a gray area is at my company. If I have certain standards of conduct, you may not agree with those standards of conduct. Don't come to work for me.
Right.
But if I have those standards of conduct, and you violate them, then, right to work states, right?
Right.
Yes.
where right to work doesn't mean this is what you think it means, but no shirt, no shoes, no service, right? I have the option for that.
Yep.
So, and again, but we tend to view those things through a political prism, and to favor both sides of it. Again, and I know I have some friends who are in the gaming industry. I mean, they might take my point of view about, at a certain point, how does that saying go? Never argue with a pig, because it drags you down into the mud and then beats you with experience. I mean, at a certain point when you're in a debate, at a certain point when you're in a debate, you should understand that you're not making headway and say, choose to end it. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Which I've actually had to do just over the last couple of days over certain circumstances that are happening in our world. Again, let's talk about what's harmful or what's not harmful. So I told a joke the earlier today. Mm-hmm. And this was kind of on the topic of words, and it's one of my slightly off-color jokes. And by the way, you're going to have to book me in to do a show on Jewish humor. I'll have to talk about that, and I'll go to the origins of the word off-color. But so here's the joke that I told. Organic is a marketing term, right? Mm-hmm. You pay extra for organic fruits, organic vegetables, and you certainly wouldn't if the same bag was marked "grown in shit," which is kind of what organic means, right? Now, that's an okay joke. It's a dad joke, but it's an okay joke for me to tell in an adult, circumstance. Right. However, if I'm a third grade teacher, I probably shouldn't tell that joke to my Sunday school class, right?
Exactly.
That's probably not the way I should go on that. So
you might have some parents kind of.
So that's it. That's it. Because when little Johnny or Janie gets home and tells their parents, I'm going to get in hot water, and if I lose my job, that's not cancel culture. That's all I want to say.
No, in that aspect, you're correct. Part of I think, again, this is a matter maybe of more not just my opinion, but what I'm speaking about. What I'm about to say is purely from my point of view.
Sure.
It's hard in today's society to really say almost anything, because it appears that most things are being deemed insensitive, racist, and the source. Now, again, this is stuff that I'm seeing. I'm not saying this is happening 24/7, 365 all around the world, because let's face it, we speak very freely here, obviously within reason, because we don't, we're conscious of who we are and what we do. So it's to me, it's a little mind-boggling, if you will, that sometimes what sounds presumably innocent is either A, blown completely out of proportion, or B, labeled something that it truly isn't.
So I live here in Las Vegas now, right? Mm-hmm. And about a mile and a half from where I live is a cemetery with, among other graves, the grave of Red Fox. Mm. If you have never heard Red Fox Plain Brown Rapper, you really should make the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely.
That said, as Red Fox jokes would be considered tame by I have the feeling that if Red Fox heard Sarah Silverman, for example, he would go, "Can you really say that?"
Absolutely, man.
I mean, that said, we've been doing this for a long time, but Red, I'm going to pick up on something that you said, which is that by today's standards. Mm-hmm. And I want to tell you something that is a recurring theme in my chats and my lectures. I often feel that mine was like the last generation that was really taught history, certainly civics,
Right.
but
Right.
history, and that there's a whole bunch of stuff that you guys don't know about, and that is part of America's history. So let me share one with you that you probably don't know about, and this is one of the earliest examples of cancel culture that you will ever hear. Have you guys ever heard of Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle?
Yes.
The name sounds very familiar.
Fatty Arbuckle, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, wasn't he a silent movie star?
Absolutely. So in 1921, he was not only a silent movie star, he was the hottest name in comedy.
Wow.
He was the mentor for Charlie Chaplin.
Yes.
He actually, as a director, discovered Buster Keaton.
Wow.
And it was really cool at the time that you got to do multiple roles because movies were smaller, and so he was an actor, he was a director, he was a screenwriter.
Oh wow!
Then came September 5th, 1921. Arbuckle decided to throw a party. He rented 3 rooms at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco, and he invited a whole bunch of people to come and party, including a 26-year-old actress named Virginia Rappe. Last name is spelled R-A-P-P-E. So Virginia became seriously ill at the party, and the hotel doctor was summoned. He concluded that her symptoms were caused by intoxication. And bearing in mind that this was 1921, what do you do for somebody who's had too much booze to drink? You give them morphine.
What?
Not kidding. 2 days later, Virginia left the party, and 2 days later, she was admitted to the hospital. Her friend, whose name was, and again, I'm not making this up, Bambina Maud Delmont, told the doctor that Virginia had been raped by Fatty Arbuckle. The doctor examined her, found no evidence of rape, although circumstantial at best, but there was no bruising. And again, remember how women were treated and viewed in 1921. I mean, I'm trying to be really fair on this, but he found no evidence of it. Rappe suffered from chronic urinary tract infections, a condition that she often made worse through her drinking. And 2 days after her admission to the hospital, so 4 days after the original party, she died from peritonitis caused by a ruptured bladder. An autopsy was done, and they found that she had never been pregnant, nor had she ever had an abortion, which were things that they looked at that time. And Delmont, her friend, again told the police that Arbuckle had raped her friend. Virginia never said that. Her friend said that. The police then theorized that Arbuckle's weight on top of Virginia was what caused her bladder to rupture. No medical professional ever said that, nor did any medical professional ever offer an opinion whether that was even a possibility. So Rappe's manager then testified at a news conference that Arbuckle had used a piece of ice as part of a sex act with Virginia. Witnesses would later testify, and I'll get to this, that Arbuckle had in fact rubbed ice on Virginia's stomach to try to ease her pain. But later on, the story changed that Arbuckle had raped Virginia using a Coke bottle. And again, there was no evidence of this. By the way, until relatively recently, I was one of the many people that believed in the Coke bottle theory of the story, but there was zero evidence of this.
Right.
So based on her friends saying that this is what happened and her manager recounting this, Arbuckle was tried twice in court, and both of those trials ended in hung juries. A third trial then commenced. Not only did Arbuckle not only was Arbuckle acquitted, something that was pretty close to unique happened. The jury actually issued an apology to him.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Which is just like really weird. Despite this, Fatty Arbuckle was canceled, and I'll tell you why. So William Randolph Hearst was the most popular media mogul in the United States at the time, right? The newspaper guy. And he went on a crusade saying that not only had Arbuckle done this, not only was it an attack on Arbuckle, but it was further an attack on the entire corrupt and evil movie industry, which of course was run by Jews, and I mean there was just a whole bunch of things. It was,
right.
but that's aside from the fact. But there were just a whole bunch of things, and what came out of this was the Hays Code, which for years was just simply known as the code in the motion pictures, right?
Right.
That said, Fatty Arbuckle was truly canceled. Not only did he never work again, but his movies were actually pulled. In some cases, they were destroyed. So Hollywood and the press had really done a number on him as cancel culture for a crime that if you go by juries, he did not commit. So.
Right.
What's the point of my telling the story? The point of my telling the story, first of all, Red, is that this is not a new thing. This has been part of American culture since the beginning. If you go back to the Puritans, right? So the Puritans had stockades for people that violated their ethical laws. Right. And it's funny because when you start talking about the word, and again, I'm going to come back to words and the power that they have, about profanity. The root of profanity is profane, which is the opposite of sacred. So profanity in the Puritan days included not going to church and praying all day on Sunday, right? For people that told that anything that was not part of the Puritan, the Puritan church, the Puritan religious beliefs was considered profane and could end you up in the stockades. I would have just spent my entire life there. I just would have been,
Same here.
Right.
So that's a little bit of a background. I mean, I'm just saying that it has always been part of American culture. So then that's the first part. Is there such a thing as cancel culture? I don't know. It's just culture to me in the sense that we've been doing it at least since 1921. You could certainly go back further than that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And whether it's from the left or the right, it hardly matters.
Exactly.
The whole idea is that people that disagree with us often suffer, people that disagree with the powers that be often suffer for that disagreement. So that's the first point that I wanted to make. And then the other one about what the words that we use. So Mitch McConnell recently made a statement that said, "My warning to corporate America is to stay out of politics," McConnell said at a news conference in Kentucky, before adding, "I'm not talking about political contributions."
Wow.
We want your political contributions. We don't want your opinions.
Just send money.
That's messed up.
And feel free to agree with me. This from a man that in 2010 said about Citizens United, a decision that reversed 100 years of campaign finance restrictions on corporations, McConnell said, for too long, some in this country have been deprived of full participation in the political process. Mitch was not talking about people.
No.
Right.
Mitch was talking about corporations.
Right.
And about how much money you can give. Now, look, I'm perfectly willing to donate $10,000 on behalf of NightDive Studios to any government program that will give me $20,000 back. There's an old saying, and it does not originate with me, that the definition of an honest politician is one that stays bought. So if you're in the coal industry, donating to people who support laws that allow you to pollute, that allow you to dump your residue in the streams is good business, right? You're saving money by if another politician comes up and says, hey, we really like clean air, and you guys have to spend $10 million to clean the air, and you think, well, for $500,000, I can help his opponent win the election. That makes business sense, right? And so I'm just saying that.
Then not politics. It's more business than it is politics at that point.
But
Exactly.
specifically the issue that McConnell was talking about was Georgia's laws that are at least interpreted as restricting the vote. And I should probably disclose at this point, you guys know this about me, that I'm kind of a card carrying liberal, but I've been a liberal for 40 years. I have other redeeming qualities, but I've been a liberal for 40 years and have pretty much been consistent in most of my positions. Actually, it's probably closer to 50, but I've been consistent in my positions, which means if you've been a liberal for 50 years, you're now a conservative, at least by some standards. So that said, there are things that I think that we as Americans should all agree on.
Mm-hmm.
The more people that vote, the better off we are.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone should have an easy opportunity to vote. I don't see any reason why more people will vote for American Idol than will vote for their state senator. I mean, I think that's problematic. If you're in Michigan and the election day is held on a Tuesday that you don't get off from work in November when the weather is at best uncertain,
Mm-hmm.
They're making it as hard on you as they can. I mean, those laws go back to a time when America, the election were laws that go back to the time that we were an agrarian country where those laws were to accommodate farmers that it wasn't planting season and it wasn't harvest season.
Right.
Well, that's less of an issue for me. And I'll also just bring up to you that at that same time the only people that could vote were white male landowners.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Casey, I don't know how you feel about it, but I was okay with those old days. No,
I'm sure you were.
but there you go, right? I mean, so Georgia enacted these laws that certainly made it more difficult, and then of course, people picked on the one about you can't give water to people that are standing outside to vote. I mean, and that's probably fair.
Yeah.
That said, it is up to corporations like Coca-Cola and Major League Baseball. They should have the right to say, we don't want to be part of this. We don't want to be associated with it. And if you want to do that, then we're going to pull out. Saying that is cancel culture, but then saying, well, I'm not going to attend an MLB game, or as Governor Abbott from Texas, said, I'm not going to throw out the first pitch for the Texas Rangers. saying that one thing is good and the other's bad when they're
right.
pretty close. Red, go ahead. I know you're going to ask a question.
No, I was going to make a statement. I think from what I've read, a lot of people are up in arms about requiring an ID to vote. Now, that's where I'm like, okay, wait a minute. To get an apartment, to get a car, to get cigarettes, to get alcohol, there's a plethora of things you need an ID for.
Right.
So,
and I'm not so sure. There's a technique that we use in sales, Red, called reduction to the ridiculous. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. That's where you pick out one thing and you pick at it.
Right.
So I'll give you other things that that are less controversial or perhaps more controversial than the ID thing. If I tell you that one of the specific provisions in the Georgia law was that for people that live in rural counties, particularly the elderly that live in rural counties in Georgia, for years, for decades, they have been meeting at church and then taking a bus into a voting station. That's now prohibited.
Now, see,
I could argue on that, saying, well, it's the church thing, it's separation of church and state, but clearly, why is that being done? Because the majority of people that did that were black.
Now, so that portion of it, I think, is ridiculous. Just like the whole not being able to go out and give people water when it's hot out, people need water. Give them some freaking water.
I got you. And don't worry about it because as far as I know, fucking water is a brand. Kind of like the organic vegetables, right? But no. And I got you on that. What you've just come to is something that we're lacking, which is right. A rational approach to it. The devil is always in the details. Yep. Right.
Absolutely.
But by and large, we're not going line item by line item. The Georgia proposal rang as being racist to a number of corporations, and I am going to defend the right of those corporations to not to vote with their money. So let me just point out to you that we're on a semantic thing here, and that words do have power.
Absolutely.
That if you don't like what somebody is doing, that is cancel culture. But if you do like what they're doing, then that's a boycott. And what's the origins of that? Can I just throw out some stuff about boycotts, about how long we've been doing them?
Yeah, so actually, I was going to ask you about that, because it's like we talk about cancel culture and we talk about like canceling people out, but how is that different than boycott, which I think is where you're going with this, which I'm glad you're doing that. So
it absolutely is. So one of the earliest boycotts of the 20th century begins in 1915 in India. Mahatma Gandhi urges the people of India to not buy British products, but to buy similar products made in India. So he basically leads a boycott over British goods, right? So that's one example, and it's an early one. Perhaps the most famous one here in the United States begins in 1955, the year I was born, with the civil rights movement, with the Montgomery bus boycott. Right. So, Rosa Parks, with intent, it was not that she was tired, but Rosa Parks challenges the law by sitting in a white only seat and refusing to give that seat up. She's arrested. And so the boycott begins, and the boycott is supported by, among others, Martin Luther King Jr. So that's kind of a famous one, and that boycott spread through municipal bus districts to the South that had Jim Crow laws. Red, I'm also going to point out that the Georgia law has been termed by Stacey Abrams as Jim Crow too. showing the power of words on the other side, right? So that's 1965, 1955. In 1965, a group of Filipino farm workers in California walks off the job to protest working conditions, and Cesar Chavez leads the Hispanic workers out on strike in solidarity and for support. But more than that, more than just the strike, it becomes a famous thing of don't buy grapes.
Right.
Stop supporting the industry by not supporting grapes. So there you have some examples of it. But let me go one step further in one of the most fascinating uses of the boycott. Is the United States' position against apartheid in South Africa. So the Reverend Dr. Leon Sullivan was an African-American minister. He was also a board member of General Motors, which for times was the largest corporation in the world. And it was certainly the largest employer of blacks in South Africa. So Dr. Sullivan fought for the adoption of what became known as the Sullivan Principles, which mandated equal treatment of employees both at work and before and after work. And that was in direct contradiction to the apartheid laws of South Africa. So this began a corporate policy, a corporate boycott, what they call disinvestment by American corporations. Among places that supported the disinvestment of South Africa was Michigan State University. They were the first, but they were not the last university to say we are not investing our pension funds in corporations that do business with South Africa. So just really interesting on the evolution of that. So, why does the word boycott have so much power? Well, if you oppose boycotts, you're on the in opposition to Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Cesar Chavez, General Motors, and half the universities of America. Mm-hmm. Where it gets sticky is that you look at the apartheid policies of South Africa, and clearly, South Africa made no bones about it. They were proud to be a racist state. Mm-hmm. The only one at that time more racist than South Africa was Rhodesia. And again, you've probably gone wrong when you have to change the name of your country.
Yeah.
Just saying that, that's kind of the litmus test on that.
Right. Right.
While we agree with that, many of the same people that supported those policies against South Africa oppose disinvestment in Israel.
Yep.
And where you get into it is I don't want to position myself or for anyone. I mean, I think we all are arbiters of right and wrong, right? You vote on what you believe is right and what you think is wrong. The problem that comes up is that when disinvestment agrees with my politics, well, clearly it's
okay.
a good thing.
Yep.
When it disagrees with my politics, well, now we have a problem.
Right.
Right. So I'm gonna say this to you, Red. If you don't think that Major League Baseball should have the right to say we don't want to play the All-Star game in Atlanta, then is the corollary of that saying, well, but I can't not go to a football game because Colin Kaepernick is kneeling? I'm putting that on you, but let me bring it up the other way. If I believe that it's okay for Major League Baseball to say, I don't want to support this policy that I perceive as being racist, then it's okay for the NFL to say, I don't support this policy that I think is against the troops or against un-American. Yeah. That's where you get into some sticky stuff. And I'm going to go back to what you said about the Georgia voting laws and about ID. Mm-hmm. The devil is always in the details. Right. I'm okay with any discussion that says, I'm going to agree with this point, and that point, but I don't agree with this one, and that one. And it's hard to be nuanced. Mm-hmm. And it means that you have to accept certain things. A quick story and a quick aside. I negotiate contracts. Mm-hmm. That's part of what I do. And sometimes you get into some granular things. I worked for GameStop for a couple of years. And GameStop is based out of Texas. Texas has some interesting laws that go back to the Wild West days. Texas has a law that any commerce that goes through the state of Texas is regulated by the state of Texas. Mm-hmm. Now, that made sense when we were talking about wagon trains. But think about the Internet. All the Internet goes through the state of Texas, which meant in the 70s, for example, Texas prosecuted people for violations of community standards for what they considered pornography. Mm-hmm. Right? By the way, I'm not a huge fan of it, but there's one line that will live forever from the show The Deuce on HBO. It's about the seamy industry in 42nd Street, and there's a scene where two organized crime figures are talking about this, and one says to the other, "Well, they've ruled that community standards are what you use to judge whether something is pornographic or not." The other one kind of shakes his head and says, "So what are our community standards?" And the first guy says, "This is New York. We ain't got any."
Right.
But again, how do you regulate that? Well, one of the contract negotiation tools, I mean, we wanted to have everything where, and I don't mean to throw out, legal mumbo jumbo, but venue and governing law were Texas, right? And often we had to negotiate about what the governing law was, and we could find a middle ground on that. But then you get up to venue. So I always used a simple principle. If you sued us, you had to come to Texas to do that. Mm-hmm. If we sued you, we had to go where your state was. After a while of doing that, I also found out that because they had bought my company's division from Michigan, we were actually chartered in Michigan. So I also used to recommend that the venue statute be come to Michigan in February. Yep. You're going to have to really, really want to sue us to do that.
Exactly.
But I used to refer to that as the principle of mutual inconvenience, right? The goal in it was to make sure that there were no frivolous suits. And Red, I'm going to say the same thing. We don't want to go through the details. We often want to look at something and say good or bad. I mean, that's being an American. I always used to work this into a conversation. Right. What are the two words that all Americans hate? It's complicated.
Exactly. Yep.
Right? We want the good guys to wear white hats and the bad guys to wear black hats so that we don't have to do anything nuanced. And when some guy comes out with gray or paisley, we're like, I don't know.
Yep.
It's confusing. I don't know.
I think that's kind of how we are as a society too, is that,
absolutely.
We want to be like, okay, well, this news outlet or this article said it was all about this. Well, I'm just going to take it at that because that's the easy thing. They're
Right.
telling me what it is. That's the easy thing.
You bring up community standards, and that brings up a whole another ball of wax when it comes to perceived or legit cancel culture is who governs these community standards. For example, and I'm going to give a very prime example. Okay. Full disclosure for all the viewers out here, you are about to hear some language that may not be suitable for little ears, so please plug them or mute your speakers. With that being said, I posted a video. I think it was either on Facebook or TikTok, all right? And my opening was, fuck your God. And it was pointed at certain people of certain faith, and it was a pointed conversation to stop shoving your religious beliefs down people's throats and expecting them to abide by your religious standards because that's what works for you, right? And now, with that being said, I was watching something on TikTok, and I reported it for what I perceived it to be hateful speech. However, because of who was saying it, it did not go against their community standards. Now, that is a double standard in my opinion. Okay, now hear me out. When you're going to sit there and basically bluntly say, again, pardon my mouth, fuck the police, do them harm, that's hate speech. But yet if I come out and say, fuck your God or fuck your cause, I'm saying all of a sudden I'm saying hate speech, but you're not because you're saying do harm to the police. Now, so the double standard in the society, I think, is part of the fuel in the fire of this cancel culture, as it's called. Go ahead.
Well, again, I mean, there's two things on that. I'm gonna say again, a more nuanced
Sure.
approach. Red, I personally, don't really have a problem with your saying it on TikTok. However, if you said it in the Baptist church on Sunday,
that would be a different story.
Location, right?
Yep. Yes, absolutely.
There's that. The other part that I would say is what is your goal? All right, where if you use that language, deep in your heart of hearts, where no BS lives, that you're doing it for the shock value. And if you do something for the shock value, you have to accept that some people are going to get, what's the word I'm looking for? Shocked.
Offended.
Offended.
Right.
I mean,
but at the same time, should they not, if they're saying the same thing, just different words, maybe even on a completely different subject, should they not be held accountable to the same rules that they're trying to essentially force on other people?
My policy personally would be for one of consistency. If you ban A, you ban B.